Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 19 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. This week and next week, I've decided to take a vacation because my 18-year-old son, Zach, is in town before he goes back to Michigan Tech to do great things. And I didn't want to leave you just hanging, though, so I prepared a couple of episodes for you that I hope you will enjoy. Every week on the podcast, I ask the same final 3 questions. One of them, as you know by now, is the brain stretcher. If you woke up tomorrow and you found out that somebody made an anonymous donation of $10 million to your organization, what would you do with it? Now, there's a reason that I asked this question. Well, 3 of them, actually. I think that it's important for an organization to be thinking ahead and thinking big so that when that $10 million or another large donation comes in, the money continues their mission, just on a scaled level. I also think that it is important for veterans who are thinking about getting involved with the organization to know where the road will be taking them in the future. And finally, there really are people out there who are millionaires or billionaires who donate a portion of their money every single year to help make this world better. They may hear about an organization and they may think, yeah, I like what they're doing, but they're probably too small to know what to do with this money. But now, if they hear this podcast, they may instead think, I like what they're doing, but I love their plan for growing the organization, and it seems like the only thing holding them back is the funding. I'm going to help them out. So because of this thought process, for this week's episode, I'm going to play through each of the answers to this one question that we've had so far. If you are looking to make a large or even a small donation to one of these great organizations to help them with their missions, you can go to veteranpodcast.com where you will see each episode. Click on the episode that relates to the organization that you would like to donate to, and it will take you to the show notes. There, you can listen to the whole podcast again if you want, or you can read about the organization, or most importantly, you can follow the link to their website and find out the specifics of how you can donate. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. Today will be our very first interview, and I am especially stoked that it's going to be with B.R. McDonald of the Veteran Artist Program.
Oh, wow. Man, I think first of all, I'd probably cry for like 2 hours straight, just with tears of joy. But 2 things I think come to mind right now. One is I would use some of it to build capacity within our organization. That's what we need the most right now is, full-time staff to help us build and do the things that we want to do across the country. The other is I would try to lay the framework for, this is kind of twofold, but my biggest dream is to have a physical space, like loosely the National Veterans Center for the Arts, maybe a physical place that would be a studio, a co-working area, and but something that would support veterans in the creative space, collaborating with professional artists to come into a physical location to create or to work. So it would have a studio, it would have a recording studio, have a green screen, it would have all sorts, screening rooms and that type of thing. And so that's my big dream. That might be more than $10 million. That might be more than $10 million, but that would certainly get us started.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 3 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. Today's guest is Maureen Stewart. Maureen is the MC, host, and workshop producer for the DC Shoot-Off Video Workshop.
Oh, $10 million to the DC Shoot-Off, huh? I think if that happened, I would really love to maybe buy a facility for us to have this workshop, yearly, a place that was dedicated for us where we didn't have to worry about having the space, a place where we could have a secure place for our gear and for our students, and a place that was dedicated to that. We really struggle every year. We've been very, very fortunate because the Navy League building has really helped us out as much as they can every year. And I'm pretty sure we get the place for free right now, but we're always kind of on pins and needles the months leading up because we're not sure if we're going to get the dates we need or if they're going to be able to. And last year we had some issues where we didn't get it the whole time, and it was really hard. So I'd love to find a dedicated facility for that. That would be incredible.
Welcome everybody to episode 4 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. Today's guest is Jamie Stacy from Code of Support Foundation.
So, believe it or not, this is a question that we talk about more often than not at Code of Support.
Nice.
And so we have had this answer for a year now because we're always talking about our executive director, Christy Kaufman. She's committed to buying a lottery ticket. I think it's once a month, just in case, because she can't talk about winning the lottery if she's not at least trying. And she's always going to try.
Dollar in a dream.
Yeah, exactly. But we could hire 50 case coordinators and there would still be a need. So what we would want to do is to pour the money into a system that makes it better and not just treat the symptoms. So I would take that money and I would want to pour it into our programs and infrastructure of Code of Support and really direct a significant portion to that, to scaling and building the Warrior Veteran Family Support Network and its virtual platform. Because that's the game changer for the space. I mean, not just that specific tool, but being able to facilitate the coordination and navigation of resources for service members and veterans and their families, that is the need. Yes, we need help with financial assistance and mental health and education and all of those other things. Yes, we need that. That's a need. But the need for the space to actually change the game so that this isn't happening still, whenever the next war is ending and when service members are transitioning out, is to make the space more effective. And that's a big goal and a big dream, but that's the dream and it has to become a reality at some point.
Welcome everybody to episode 5 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. Today's guest is Rich Moore from the 6th Branch.
Man, $10 million is a lot of money. I'd have to say that probably 3/4 of it we would invest immediately, just because you make 6 or 7% off of that. You can probably pay your executive director salary every year, and that means that you can exist for another however many years. Because for us, we've always never even had the money to be sure we could do anything. We've had executive directors working for free, not had a paid staff at all. So to have some money invested that generated some, whether it's just 70 or 80K a year, would be like a huge deal to us. I'd probably take 100 or 150 grand and inject it directly into operations just to make our current operations more robust. And then I'd take the remainder and I'd give bonuses to our current workers, our executive director, Dave Landamore, and our operations manager, Colin Lyman, and everyone else that's working for us, just to let them know how much it meant to us for them to sacrifice so much. Because, like I said, some of them were working without getting paid.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 6 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. On today's episode, I will be talking to Sean Gobin of Warrior Hike.
I would expand the program so I could, get any veteran that was interested in doing one of these hikes the opportunity to do so. Right now we're limited by resources. So, for example, we were only able to put, approximately 30 veterans out on the trails this year. So if I were to have unlimited funding, I would like to have a warrior hike on a trail in every state in the United States. And then additionally to branch out to some of those international trails, and then also to set up paddling trips around the United States, shorter paddling trips as well. So the answer would be to be able to accommodate anybody who would want to go on one of these trips would be what I would like to do with that money if possible.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 7 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. As you just heard my daughter tell you, My name is Jeremy Paris, and today's guest is going to be Vanessa Daly from the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, also known as TAPS.
Gosh, besides give myself a raise, I think there are so many survivors that, unless we reach out to them over the phone or online, there's only so many of us. Our headquarters is in Washington, D.C. We have a large number of staff that work there. At one time, I worked in a regional office on Fort Hood. My husband and I moved to Fort Bliss, and I opened up a TAPS regional office there. But those were on military installations, and it'd be so great. I mentioned our care teams that meet all over the U.S., and it'd be so great if we could establish offices all over the U.S. and empower our survivors. Because that's really, at the end of the day, after our survivors have attended one of these workshops or one of our events, it's really about empowering them. You can either let the grief journey consume you, or you can use it to empower yourself and to grow yourself and really be a living legacy. So many times I look at what I'm doing and I think, if at the end of the day, I'm doing something that my dad would be proud of, that's all that really matters. So I just think, empowering our survivors, having offices all over the U.S. where these families could go for, support. They could drop in at any time. And, it's great talking to people over the phone and online, but to walk into a room and get a hug from somebody when you're having one of those days. When I worked in the Fort Hood and Fort Bliss offices, it was just that personal contact with these families that really makes so much difference. So that's what I would do.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 8 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris, and today's guest is Aaron Scheinberg with The Mission Continues.
That would be wonderful. I'd love for that to happen. I'm sure many of us in Mission Continues would, especially those who are working on fundraising, which is not easy, of course. I mean, I mentioned our goal of getting 100,000 veterans doing service on a regular basis. Every day I get emails from veterans who are in cities where we just haven't been able to focus because of, lack of resources and just the requirements that it takes to launch a service platoon as a growing nonprofit. And some of the emails come from places in upstate New York or in West Virginia, or in Idaho, South Dakota, Montana, in places where you're not going to end up on a top 50 list of, population or cities in the country, or where corporate headquarters are, or top media markets are. And most veterans nonprofits, don't end up kind of in those areas. And every time someone reached out to us and says, I want to start a service platoon, I've got veterans that are ready to go. We just need your support. It really sucks. It pulls at your heartstrings that we just can't do anything about it. And money doesn't solve everything. You have to grow as a nonprofit, but it certainly would help to get us from where we are now at 45 platoons to hundreds of platoons. I think we could probably get there a lot quicker with $10 million of resources.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris, and today we have a great episode for you with Drew Cameron of Combat Paper.
Boom, let's do it. Sounds great. Are you offering?
Somebody out there just might.
That's crazy money, man. I don't know, $10 million? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is funding for all of the Combat Paper programming for like the next 10 years. That's probably what I'd do. I'd take care of the overhead. Boom. Done.
Nice.
Yeah. So we could just that would pay for our way. It'd pay our fuel, it'd pay our rent, it'd pay our living costs, supplies and material, it'd pay for us to travel and provide workshops. We could buy all that new equipment we've been saving up for. Heck, I could even get a studio that was my own and turn it into where I could do workshops maybe every month. Boom. People coming ongoing for free. Yeah, I would do a lot with it. That's crazy money.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 10 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. Today's guest is Blaine Smith from Team Red, White, and Blue.
Well, the first thing I would do is try to find someone to send a thank you note to, because that's a huge donation. We have a director of gratitude at Team Red, White, and Blue, and we're trying to be really big on thank you notes. So I would do that first. But if I couldn't, what we would do is we would continue to scale our programs. I mean, I think that we're in a position where, with that kind of financial investment, we could actually turn it pretty quickly and scale our programs. We have, just to give you some reference, we only have 12 employees right now for the whole organization,
wow,
serving over 70,000 members. Every region of the country has one employee assigned against it. We have one regional director assigned to each region of the country. We have one person assigned against our camps program, one person against development, one person against finance. I mean, we are a really super lean organization. So I would probably give those folks some help so that we could better conduct outreach in the communities, better work with partners across the space so that we could access and refer into better resources. You know, we'd bolster the leader development program, we'd bolster the camps. And it may sound like kind of a boring example, but we would just sort of do more of what we do and scale up quickly and try to get more veterans involved in more communities more often. I think it would be awesome.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 11 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Paris, and today we have Jonathan Way of the Telling Project on.
Programming. I mean, this is the thing. Well, okay, so there are a lot of things that we could do with that. And one of the things that we've been doing in the last couple of years is really structuring how we're going to expand as we get more resources, because essentially it's a matter of resources for us right now. We have more demand for these projects than we have ability to fulfill by, many times at this point. So what we're looking at in terms of expansion is what we'd like to do is establish regional representatives of the project around the country. And these would be people who work for the Telling Project, who are writers and producers themselves, and basically work within that region to generate to generate and execute projects. So what we'll be doing through that is even more regionally focusing the work that we do. So essentially what we do right now is we partner with community organizations and individuals to create these things. We instigate, we shepherd the process through, but essentially what we want to do is be able to hand it off to those community partners as much as possible, because we want it to be a community project. We want these folks, this conversation, to be something that community takes possession of. So in establishing some of these regional representatives of the Telling Project, we're going to further focus that in that way. And we would also be able to then do many more projects a year. So if we broke the nation down into, say, 6 regions, we would have 6 regional representatives. Each of them could do 6 to 8 projects a year. That would be 36 to 48 projects. Plus, we would still have our headquarters here in Austin. And what we would be doing here in Austin is, obviously, we would be responsible for a region ourselves, but we would also be piloting projects like this one with females in combat. There are other projects we would love to do similarly to that, which would be, working with TBI caregivers and TBI survivors, working with survivors of military sexual trauma, working with people who had done, certain kinds of perhaps less understood military service, basically kind of targeting different kinds of ideas and stories, which we could then do a pilot project here in Austin and come up with the way that we felt like it would work best, do a run here, get some national exposure for that pilot project. And then each of these regional representatives could then do projects in their region, working with that population there as well. And so what we do is we expand, we deepen, we make the conversation even more eloquent, and we also focus it more regionally. That's one of the things that we want to do.
Very cool.
The other thing that we would like to do, and seeing as Ari is saying $10 million, I'll go ahead and start talking about this as well. The other thing we would like to do is, in keeping our headquarters here, we would establish an actual brick and mortar theater here. And the theater would be capable. It would be video, audio, and print publishing capable. And so what we would be able to do then is have performances here in this space. We would know what the parameters are. We would know exactly how to shoot it. We would know exactly how to edit it. We would know exactly how to make it into a performance that could then be proliferated. And essentially what we would be able to do is start an online telling project channel.
That would be great.
Right. And not just a channel where people can go and watch performances, but a channel that's actually keyword searchable. So what we are actually doing is creating also an oral history database that is fully searchable. So we would be able to have it, in terms of, we could have it text, we could have it audio in terms of, podcast, however that worked out best. And we could have the actual performances themselves. So we would have a huge amount of material that we could make available as this kind of essentially archive, an archive of military experience. We could distribute that in any number of different kinds of ways. We could make it available in any number of different kinds of ways. But essentially what we want to be able to do is have a facility where we are able to make sure that the quality of the actual material itself is absolutely top notch. And that would be, 10 million wouldn't get us that facility, but 10 million would get us close to, it would put us on the path to getting that facility. In other words, it would be something that we could work on that foundation very easily.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 12 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. Today's guest is Erin Montecure with Teach for America.
Well, I would do several things, but first, I would really want to fund some specific programming for veterans in all of our regions, not just regions where we have big military bases, but regions where we can put on some specific programming that is tailored just to military veterans and spouses to continue to foster that community within Teach for America. I think I would also want to take a portion and donate a little bit to another initiative that supports veterans or another organization that supports veterans. I think that that's just the service in me wanting to help another organization. And then I think I would want to possibly maybe hire a couple of veterans myself for our team so that we could expand our recruitment efforts and our efforts to support veterans across the country who work for Teach for America.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 13 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. As you can tell, I got some new intro music. This is Javier and the Innocent Sons, and I will tell you all about the song and the band at the end of the podcast, and you'll actually be able to hear the whole song without me talking over it like I'm doing right now. Today on the podcast, I have the delightful Emily Rich with Operation Gratitude.
Aside from cry tears of joy and jump up and down for a solid 5 months straight, I would continue doing everything that we are doing. I would send as many care packages as we possibly could to every single member of our military as possible. We pride ourselves in having a very low overhead as a nonprofit because everything that we do goes toward our troops. So I truly think that that $10 million would go towards that.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 14 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. Today's guest is Jenny Carr from Courage Beyond.
I think after I finished crying with joy, I would break ground. We've, like I said, I've been doing these retreats, and we've been doing them out of the kindness and goodwill of these incredible people that own their own sites and own retreat spaces. But as someone who believes so strongly that healing happens wherever you find it, I want to build a space where we can have that thought actually practiced. So I want to build a retreat site that's also our offices, that also has horses, where we can garden, where we can feed people physically and spiritually and emotionally. I want to be able to hold conferences there where we can show what we're doing and where other people can show what they're doing so that it becomes a community conversation. And so we're actually collaborating to create a solution around mental health and wellness for veterans and their families.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 15 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. We've got a great episode this week with Wiley Gray from Soldier Encore.
I would immediately hire a team of the smartest people I could find to help me put together a strategy for $10 million and my organization. Because again, I've had the fortune of being surrounded by amazing people, and that's a big question. I think I would definitely reach out to friends and family to and professional contacts to find the best answer. But I think the short end of the stick is it would go into making Soldier Encore not just an amazing tool, but a tool that lasts in perpetuity.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 16 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris, and I hope that everybody out there had a wonderful and safe 4th of July. I know I did. Today's episode, we are going to be breaking some new ground here on the podcast because instead of just one guest, we have three. We have Peter Guidry, Kelly Guidry, and also Ron the Admiral McGee from Forgotten Not Gone.
Well, I would buy this property right across the street with 38 acres over here, and we'd pave it out and make a nice track for us veterans to be able to ride these recumbent tracks with themselves and their families without having to worry about being on the streets and getting ran over. We would also be able to have all the different alternative forms of therapy, be able to pay the staff as well to be able to do things like massage therapy, acupuncture. We'd have the physical resources in to be able to pay these people that work in these specialties a salary, so we can not have to charge our veterans at all. So that'd be a huge blessing to allow the veterans to come in here and have everything free of charge for them.
And also, it'd also be nice because we could set up the locations like we talked about earlier in different parts of the city and be able to branch out to some other areas, probably than just Las Vegas. Right now, since it's North Las Vegas, anybody can come, but for some people who live in the South or East or West, it's a little bit more difficult. But be able to branch out and have a location in each of those areas and start to branch out, that's the eventual goal.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 17 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris. And on this week's episode, we have Leanne Dorflinger from American Gold Star Mothers.
I think, since what we often do is make donations to other organizations, especially if we got that kind of money, that would be kind of exciting, wouldn't it? But I actually would want to give it for research into traumatic brain injury and PTSD. I particularly am fond of the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Foundation, and because they do both research and they do therapy with wounded warriors, and I would love to see that money spent on them. Is what I would like.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 18 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. We have a great episode for you today. It is an interview with Dave Bray, the lead singer of Madison Rising.
Well, my wife does all the booking, and she does a lot of the logistics. So her and I would have a long talk and a conversation about how she's probably not going to see me for the next 5 years. And then we would start planning. I think that we would go into operations mode, just full on. We would need help. We would have to hire some extra helpers or volunteers. And we would have to plan out something really, really special, like something that would need to be maybe a reality show or something, but it would need to be significant. You know what I mean? It would have to be known that it was going on around the nation. And I think it would be really, really cool to document it and film it, because the stories and the people that I meet along the way and the hands that I shake, it's absolutely extraordinary. Listen, I've met them all. I met, Donald Trump, Sarah Palin. I've met war heroes, Oliver North. I've met R. Lee Ermey, Gunny. I meet these people, and I'm just in awe of what they've done for our nation and for Americans in general. And I think it would be really cool not just to dive into those people because they already have a platform, but I also think it would be really cool when I shake the hand of a guy who's done 6 tours and lost his leg, and he's sitting there and he's telling me, you guys have changed the way I look at life. I'm sitting there going, are you kidding me? I've done that? Those are the stories that I want people to hear. I want people to understand that Madison Rising is more than just a rock band touring the country. We're promoting American way of life. It's something that is just slipping through our hands as we speak. Just right now, we're losing pieces and chunks and ginormous hunks of what America truly is, and that's the people, man. And, you know, you see these guys and the looks on their faces. We have a flag that we tour the country with, and I get it out, and I have veterans hold it on stage, and then we all fold it together after it's over. And there's been the tears of some of the strongest, toughest, most badass dudes you've ever seen falling on that flag. And those are the stories that I want people to hear. That's what I want people to know and remember Madison Rising for. And that's what we would do with 5 mil. Would just go heal, man. Go heal people.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope that you got something out of it. And once again, I invite you to go to veteranpodcast.com, where you can see all of the episodes, get into the show notes, follow the links to their websites, make the donation that you would like to, or if you just wanted to get involved with one of the organizations, you can contact them through the site. And as promised, next week I will have another interesting episode for you that'll be a little bit different. So be sure to check that one out too.